They tried to make me sign over my house, my own children, the ones I raised with everything I had. But what they didn't know was that the neighbor had been listening. That recording, and what I did with it, would become the final chapter of their schemes and my quiet revenge. Hello, my dear friends. Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I love hearing where you're tuning in from. It makes me feel like I'm sitting across the table from you. And please, if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Her Revenge Stories. It means more than you know. Now, let me tell you what happened to me, all in the course of one long, unforgettable day. My name is Diana Cooper, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in the same small white house in upstate New York for nearly 50 years. It isn't fancy, but it's home. My late husband, Frank, and I raised our 2 children there. We planted the maple tree out front when our son Michael was born and built the back porch with our own hands the summer before our daughter Claire left for college. Every scratch on the kitchen counter, every creak in the wooden stairs, it all holds a memory. So when my children started circling around me about making things easier and planning ahead, I knew exactly what they meant. They wanted the house. It started with little comments. Michael, now 50 and living in the city, would sigh and say, "Mom, this place must be too much for you to manage." Claire, who visits only on holidays, once patted my hand and said, "Don't you want to downsize, Mom? Maybe move into a nice retirement condo? You'd have less to worry about." They said the words sweetly, like they were doing me a favor. But the looks they shared when they thought I wasn't watching told a different story. That morning, the day it all came to a head, the air was damp with spring rain. I had been up early, making tea and buttering toast, when I saw Michael's car pull up in front. Claire was with him. It startled me. They rarely came together, and never unannounced. They walked in without knocking, Michael in his gray suit, Claire with her oversized purse slung across her shoulder. Michael kissed my cheek distractedly, already loosening his tie, and Claire looked around the kitchen like she was inspecting a hotel room. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said, pulling out a chair at the table. Something about the tone of his voice, the way it pressed down heavy, final, made my stomach twist. I sat across from them, clutching my teacup like a lifeline. Claire opened her purse and pulled out a neat folder of papers. She spread them across the table. "These are just some documents we need you to look at. Nothing complicated, Mom. Just some signatures. It's really just for your protection." I looked down. Words blurred in front of me. Deed transfer agreement. Beneficiary assignments. Power of attorney. I felt heat rise in my chest. "What is this?" I asked slowly. Michael leaned forward, his voice calm, rehearsed. "Mom, it's for the best. The house, the finances, it'll all be under our names. But of course, you'll still live here. It's just easier this way. You won't have to worry about bills or maintenance anymore." I stared at my son, the boy I once rocked to sleep, the man I had cheered for at his college graduation. Now he was speaking to me like I was a burden, a foolish old woman who couldn't be trusted with her own home. Claire chimed in, her smile tight. "We just don't want you to get taken advantage of, Mom. Imagine if you fell for some scam or forgot to pay your taxes. This way, everything is safe with us." Safe with them. The words rang in my head like a warning bell. "I don't want to sign anything," I said, my voice trembling. Michael's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't be difficult. We're just trying to help." Claire reached out and patted my hand, her nails sharp against my skin. "It's really for your own good." I pulled my hand back. I said no. The kitchen fell silent except for the rain tapping against the window. Michael gathered the papers into a stack, his movements sharp, impatient. "Think about it," he said coldly. "We'll be back later. You'll see reason." They left, the screen door slamming behind them. I sat at the table, staring at the empty chairs. My tea had gone cold. I thought of Frank then. If he had been alive, he would never have let them talk to me like that. He would have put his foot down, told them this house was ours and always would be. But Frank had been gone 6 years, and I was alone. or almost alone. Because next door, just across the hedges, lived my neighbor, Margaret. She was in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and not one to mind her own business. Some might call her nosy, but I knew she meant well. She'd brought me soup when I had the flu, helped me rake leaves in the fall. And she had a way of noticing things. An hour after Michael and Claire left, there was a knock at my door. Margaret stood there, umbrella dripping, her eyes bright behind her glasses. "Diana," she said, lowering her voice, "I need to talk to you." I let her in, and she shook off the rain, setting her umbrella by the door. She looked around, then leaned closer. "I couldn't help overhearing," she whispered. "They were pushing you to sign something, weren't they?" I swallowed hard. "Yes. The house. They want me to sign it over to them." Margaret's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I thought so. I was out on the porch, and I heard everything. And Diana, I recorded it. Every word." My breath caught. "You recorded it?" She nodded, pulling her phone from her pocket. "It was so wrong, the way they were pressuring you. I didn't want you to be alone in this. If they try anything, you have proof." I sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. Proof. A lifeline, handed to me when I felt cornered and small. "Why would you do that for me?" I asked softly. Margaret smiled faintly. "Because I've seen this happen before. Families turning on their elders, trying to take what doesn't belong to them. It's not right, Diana. You deserve better." I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness this time, but from the unexpected comfort of knowing someone was on my side. For the first time that day, I took a full breath. I didn't know yet how I would use that recording or what it would lead to. But I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't powerless anymore. And as the rain eased outside, I realized this was only the beginning of my revenge. When Margaret handed me her phone that day, with a little audio file labeled Cooper's MP3, I realized my children had made a grave mistake. They thought I was an old woman with no fight left in her. But they had underestimated me and my neighbor. I sat at my kitchen table that afternoon. The rain having stopped, the house filled with that damp spring smell of wet earth and fresh leaves. The papers Michael and Claire had left behind were still sitting in a neat pile on the counter. Every time I looked at them, I felt my hands clench. Margaret poured us both fresh tea. "Diana, you can't let them bully you. You need to be prepared." I nodded, staring into the steaming cup. "But what do I do? If I refuse, they'll just come back, maybe angrier. And if I sign, I lose everything." Margaret tapped her phone. "You've got this recording. That's your leverage." I took a slow breath. She was right. It wasn't just a recording, it was proof. Proof that they had conspired to pressure me into signing away my home, treating me not as their mother, but as an obstacle in their way. That night, I lay awake in my bedroom, listening to the branches of the old maple brush against the window. Memories of Michael and Claire as children floated through my mind. Michael building forts out of couch cushions, Claire curling up in my lap with her favorite book. I had loved them more than my own life. I still did, in a way. But the people they had become, those were not the children I raised. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not one of those slick, expensive ones you see on television, but Mr. Lewis, a quiet, gray-haired man I'd known for years. He had handled the probate after Frank passed, and I trusted him. "Mrs. Cooper," he said kindly when I arrived at his office, clutching my purse, "what brings you in today?" I sat down and told him everything. About Michael and Claire, about the documents, about Margaret's recording. His expression grew darker as I spoke. "Diana," he said finally, folding his hands on the desk, "this is elder coercion. What they tried to do could have serious legal consequences. And with that recording, you've got them cornered." "Legal consequences?" I echoed softly. He nodded. "At the very least, it would destroy their credibility if they tried to challenge your estate later. But depending on how far you want to go, you could even press charges." I sat back, the words sinking in. Charges. Against my own children. The thought twisted my stomach. But then I remembered Michael's sharp tone, Claire's false smile, the way they had spoken to me like I was nothing more than a signature on a line. I don't want them in prison, I said slowly. I want them to know I'm not weak, that they can't push me around. Mr. Lewis smiled faintly. There are ways to do that. Quiet ways. That afternoon, when Michael called, I let the phone ring twice before answering. Mom, he said briskly, Claire and I are coming by tomorrow evening. We'll go over the paperwork again. Maybe you'll have come to your senses by then. Something inside me hardened. All right, Michael, I said sweetly. Tomorrow evening works. He seemed almost triumphant when he hung up, as though he had already won. But what he didn't know was that I had already set my plan in motion. I called Margaret, asked if she could come over the next day. She didn't hesitate. Of course, Diana. I'll be there. Whatever you need. The following evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, I set out my kitchen table with a teapot, 3 cups, and the very papers my children wanted me to sign. I wanted everything to look inviting, calm, ordinary. When Michael and Claire walked in, they looked at each other, surprised. Well, Michael said, hanging his jacket on the chair, it looks like you're ready to be reasonable. Claire sat down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This is the right choice, Mom. You'll thank us later. I poured the tea, my hand steady. Margaret slipped quietly into the house a few minutes later, pretending she had just stopped by. Oh, I didn't mean to intrude, she said sweetly. But Diana insisted I join her for tea tonight. Michael and Claire exchanged a glance, but said nothing. I set the papers in front of me. So, these are what you want me to sign? Michael leaned forward eagerly. Yes, Mom. Just a few signatures, and everything will be in order. Claire pushed a pen toward me. It'll only take a minute. I picked up the pen, twirling it between my fingers. Before I sign anything, I want you both to listen to something. Their smiles faltered. I took Margaret's phone from my pocket and pressed play. The kitchen filled with the sound of their own voices, sharp and insistent. Don't be difficult, Mom. It's for your own good. We'll be back later. You'll see reason. The recording ended, the silence that followed heavier than any storm. Michael's face drained of color. Claire's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. I set the phone down on the table, my gaze steady. This is what you sounded like to me. Not children who love their mother. Not family. Strangers trying to steal my home. Mom, Michael started, his voice tight. I held up my hand.
No, don't speak.
Listen, I took this recording to my lawyer. He told me exactly what this means for both of you. If I wanted, I could press charges. I could ruin your reputations. But I won't, because despite everything, you're still my children. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Michael's jaw worked, but no words came out. I'm giving you one chance. I continued, my voice firm. You will never again bring up this house, or my finances, or any papers for me to sign. You will treat me with respect, or you will not come here at all. If you ever try something like this again, I won't hesitate to use that recording. Do you understand me? The silence stretched until Claire finally whispered, Yes, Mom. Michael nodded stiffly. We understand. Margaret sipped her tea calmly, as though she hadn't just witnessed a family's foundation crack wide open. I gathered the papers, slid them back across the table. Take these with you. And don't ever bring them back. They did. They left that night with their heads down, their voices quiet. For the first time in years, I felt the power shift back into my hands. Later, when the house was quiet and Margaret had gone home, I sat alone at the table, staring out at the darkened yard. The maple tree swayed gently in the wind, its branches strong despite all the storms it had weathered. I thought of Frank again, and I knew he would be proud of me. Proud that I had stood my ground. Proud that I hadn't let our children turn me into a shadow of myself. That night, as I climbed the stairs and crawled into bed, I realized something. My revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't been dramatic. It had been quiet, final, and exactly what they never expected. I wish I could tell you that after Helen showed me the small recorder she kept in her purse, I immediately felt relief. But the truth was, my heart pounded harder than ever. That tiny device, something you could slip in a coat pocket, suddenly felt like a lifeline dangling in front of me. I was too old to be chasing miracles, but that morning, in my own kitchen, staring at Helen with tears in my eyes, I realized this might be the only proof I had that my children were trying to cheat me out of the one thing I had left, my home. Diana, Helen said gently, you don't deserve to be treated this way. I've been your neighbor for 20 years, and I've seen the sacrifices you've made for your family. They're trying to take advantage of you. Let me help. I clutched my teacup, my hands trembling. Helen, I don't even know how to fight back. I'm 73 years old. I don't have lawyers or piles of money. All I have is this house. She reached over and patted my hand. Then we make this house your shield. Her words sat with me. A shield. For so long, my home had been my comfort, my shelter from storms both literal and emotional. I raised my children in these walls, survived the long nights after my husband died, and found joy again in the quiet moments, watching birds from the porch, reading old cookbooks by the fire. And now, the very people I had given life to wanted me to sign it all away. I sat back, thinking about my son Mark's sharp voice from the night before. Just sign the papers, Mom. It's what's best. Best for whom? Certainly not for me. Do you really think anyone would listen to me if I accused my own children? I asked softly. Helen's eyes narrowed, firm but kind. They'll listen if we have proof. And last night, Diana, we got plenty of it. She opened her purse and pressed the play button. My kitchen filled with the sound of voices, my children's voices. Cold, impatient, calculating. She's getting old. Mark's voice said flatly. We need that house signed over before she changes her mind. Then my daughter-in-law, Kelly. Just push her a little harder. She won't fight back. She never does. I felt my stomach twist hearing it. My own family, speaking about me like I was some obstacle to bulldoze, some inconvenient signature away from being erased. My breath caught when I heard myself in the recording, my voice small and uncertain, agreeing to think about it while they pressed me. The recorder clicked off, and silence washed over us. Helen leaned closer. This isn't just about your house, Diana. This is about your dignity. We can show them that they can't bully you into a corner. I wiped at my eyes, the tears coming whether I wanted them or not. But what do I do now? Do I confront them? Do I call the police? She shook her head.
Not yet.
Let them come back. Let them push again. And when they do, you'll have your moment. Her plan sounded terrifying, but something deep inside me, a spark I hadn't felt in years, flickered alive. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was pride, but I couldn't let them win, not like this. The day crept forward. I went about my routine, though my mind was far from settled. I folded laundry with shaky hands, stirred soup on the stove though I wasn't hungry, and sat in my favorite armchair staring at the framed photographs on the mantel. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. All those years, I believed we were a family bound by love. Now, each photograph felt like a faded promise. By late afternoon, the familiar sound of Mark's car pulling into the driveway made my chest tighten. My son and Kelly walked up the steps like they owned the place, not even bothering to knock. Helen, true to her word, sat at my kitchen table, calmly sipping tea. Mom, Mark began, his voice already clipped. Have you thought more about the papers? I glanced at Helen, who gave the faintest nod. I've thought a lot about it, I said slowly. Kelly slid a stack of papers onto the table, her nails tapping against the manila folder. Good. Then you know this is what needs to happen. You don't need all this space anymore. It's time you let us handle things. Their audacity made my blood boil. And where would you have me go? I asked, my voice trembling more with anger than fear. Kelly smirked. There's a nice assisted living center on Maple Street. We already looked into it. They'll take good care of you. You want me in a nursing home? This is my house. My life is here. Mark crossed his arms, impatience written all over his face. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sign the papers, and you won't have to worry about anything. We'll handle it all. Helen set her teacup down with a deliberate clink. Funny thing, she said, her voice calm but cutting. You talk about handling things, but I couldn't help overhearing how you really feel last night. Mark shot her a look. What are you talking about? Helen reached into her purse, pulled out the recorder, and pressed play. The kitchen filled once again with their voices. Cold. Unforgiving.
Scheming.
Every word spilled out into the room. Undeniable. Mark's face drained of color, while Kelly's mouth hung open. You recorded us? Mark sputtered. Helen didn't flinch. I did. And if you ever try to force Diana into signing away her house again, this recording won't just sit in my purse. It'll go to every lawyer, every friend, every person who needs to hear it. I sat there, my hands gripping the edge of the table, feeling strength flood back into me for the first time in years. They had been exposed, stripped bare in their greed and cruelty. Kelly tried to recover, her voice sharp. This doesn't prove anything. You can't use that against us. But Helen's eyes narrowed. It proves everything. And trust me, you don't want to test how far Diana and I are willing to take this. The silence that followed was heavy. My son, the boy I had once rocked to sleep, stood there red-faced and trembling, his jaw tight. Kelly looked ready to spit fire, but neither of them could say a word to undo what had just been laid bare. I took a deep breath, my voice steady at last. You've both shown me who you really are. I won't be signing anything. Not today, not ever. And if you try again, this recording will speak louder than I ever could. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. Not just of my house, but of my story, my life. And as they stormed out, slamming the door behind them, I looked at Helen and whispered, "Thank you." She smiled softly. "Don't thank me, Diana. Just promise me you'll never let them silence you again." I nodded, a tear sliding down my cheek, but this time it wasn't from weakness. It was from relief. From victory, however small. And as the sun dipped low beyond the curtains, I realized my revenge wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about standing tall, about showing them I couldn't be broken. That evening, I sat back in my chair, a quiet calm settling in. The house was mine, my memories safe within its walls. And though the battle wasn't over, I had proven something important. I was still here. I was still Diana Cooper. And I wasn't going anywhere. That evening, after Mark and Kelly stormed out of my house, I sat in silence for a long time. The walls seemed to hum with the echoes of their voices, their demands, their greed. I had lived in this house for 46 years, and never once had I felt like a stranger inside it, until my own children tried to make me. But as the quiet settled in, something changed. Instead of fear, I felt a current of strength running through me, like I'd rediscovered a part of myself I thought had been buried years ago. My house wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was my story, my independence, my home. And no stack of papers shoved across my kitchen table was going to erase that. Helen stayed a while after they left, just sitting with me in the dim glow of the kitchen light. She didn't talk much. She didn't have to. Just her presence was enough to remind me I wasn't entirely alone. "You did well today, Diana," she said finally, finishing her tea. "You didn't let them scare you. That's important." I shook my head. I almost did. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't had that recording, I might have signed just to keep the peace. And then where would I be? Probably packing my life into boxes. Helen's eyes softened. "That's exactly why you can't fight this alone anymore. They'll be back. People like that, they don't stop until they get what they want." Her words lingered long after she left, and even as I climbed into bed, they echoed in my mind. They'll be back. Sure enough, I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, as the sun crept through the curtains and the smell of coffee filled my kitchen, the phone rang. I picked it up, my heart already heavy, and sure enough it was Mark. "Mom," he said, his voice sharp, clipped. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday." I kept my tone steady. "There's nothing more to talk about, Mark. I told you. I'm not signing the house over." There was a pause, then a low growl in his voice. "You're making a mistake. You think some little stunt with Helen changes anything? We're your family. You owe us."
The word hit me like a slap.
Owe us. I had spent my life giving to that boy, giving him food, a roof, an education, my time, my love. And now, in his eyes, all of that boiled down to a debt I was supposed to repay with the only thing I had left. "I don't owe you a thing, Mark," I said firmly, my hands trembling against the receiver. "And if you try to push me again, you won't like how this ends." I hung up before he could answer. The day stretched on slowly, every creak of the floorboards, every car passing on the street, setting my nerves on edge. By mid-afternoon, I caught sight of Kelly walking across the front yard, her heels clicking against the walkway. She didn't even knock, just let herself in like she owned the place. "Diana," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Can we talk?" I stood in the living room, arms crossed. "About what?" She sighed dramatically, setting her purse down on the couch. "Look, maybe we were too harsh yesterday, but you have to see it from our side. You're alone here. You can't keep up with everything. Wouldn't it be easier to just let us take care of the house? You wouldn't have to worry about bills, repairs, anything." Her words were sugar-coated poison. "This isn't about bills," I snapped. "It's about control. You want to push me out so you can move in. Don't pretend otherwise. The first move," I repeated. She nodded. "They expect you to just react, to be defensive. But if you want to protect yourself for good, you have to get ahead of them. Take control before they try something worse." Her words stirred something inside me. For weeks, I had been on the defensive, pushed, cornered, bullied. But what if I turned the tables? What if I showed them that I wasn't just some fragile old woman waiting to be shoved aside? The thought lingered as the hours slipped by. After Helen left, I sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper and a pen, jotting down ideas, scraps of plans. My hand shook as I wrote, but there was a fire in me now, a determination I hadn't felt in years. If my children wanted to play a game of power, they'd see just how strong I could be. That night, as the neighborhood quieted and the crickets sang outside, I walked from room to room of my house, touching the walls, the photographs, the furniture worn with years of living. This wasn't just a building. It was the sum of my life. And I would not let anyone steal it from me. When I finally sat down in my armchair, I whispered into the stillness, "You try to take everything from me, but I'm still here. And you have no idea what's coming." For the first time in days, I slept peacefully, not because the storm had passed, but because I finally knew I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Tomorrow, I decided, I would begin my revenge. It was strange how quickly the hours had slipped away. That morning, I woke up just another widowed woman with a modest home and a heart that still longed for the warmth of family. By now, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across my kitchen walls, I was someone else entirely, a woman on the edge of seeing justice in her own living room. Before I go on, let me pause and ask you something. Where are you watching from tonight? What time is it for you right now? I love hearing the little details because they make me feel connected. And don't forget, if you're new here, please subscribe to Her Revenge Stories. These stories mean more when we share them together. Now, let's return to my long day. The day my children thought they could strip me of my dignity, and the day my neighbor's courage gave me back my voice. After the police had left the first time, my house was silent. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards as I paced. Helen had gone back to her place for a bit, promising she'd return later to check on me. I'd hugged her before she left, clutching her like the sister I never had. For so many years, I thought of myself as alone, left behind by both my husband's passing and my children's indifference. But Helen had shown me that sometimes family doesn't share your blood, it shares your pain. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the teapot in front of me. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was adrenaline. I knew my children would return, and I knew they wouldn't come empty-handed. They'd want answers about the police, about the neighbor, about why their scheme hadn't gone as planned. And I would give them answers, but not the ones they expected. When the knock finally came, it was sharp, insistent, almost angry. I didn't rise right away. I let them knock again and again, each pound echoing through my small house like a drumbeat. Finally, I stood and opened the door. There they were, my son Mark, his wife Janet, and my daughter Lisa. The three of them looked tense, their smiles gone, their eyes narrowed. Mark was the first to speak, his voice low but edged with hostility. "Mom, what's going on?" "The police said someone filed a report." "Was that your neighbor? What lies has she been telling them?" I folded my arms across my chest and met his eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. "They weren't lies, Mark. They were the truth. Every word of it. You tried to make me sign over this house. You pressured me, and you thought no one would notice." Janet stepped forward, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. We were just trying to make sure you were taken care of. You can't keep this house up forever. You'll be in a nursing home eventually. We were planning ahead." "Planning ahead for yourselves," I said coldly. "Don't pretend it was for me. You've been circling this house like vultures ever since your father died." Lisa frowned and crossed her arms. "Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a conversation. You didn't have to drag the police into this." That was the moment I felt the steel settle inside me. For too long, I'd let them frame everything as my fault, my forgetfulness, my supposed weakness, my reluctance to hand over what was mine. But not anymore. I motioned toward the living room. "Sit down. All of you." They exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the authority in my voice, but they obeyed. For once, they looked like children again, waiting to be scolded. I walked to the corner where my old record player sat, and next to it, Helen's small digital recorder. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, holding it up. Mark frowned. "What are you doing with that?" "It's the reason the police came," I said. "Helen recorded everything you said earlier today. Every insult, every bit of pressure, every word about taking this house. It's all here." Janet's face turned pale, though she tried to mask it with a laugh. "You can't be serious. No one's going to believe that. You're just an old woman clinging to drama." "Then why do you look so nervous?" I asked quietly. The room fell into silence. I could feel their unease, the way they shifted in their seats, the way their eyes darted between one another. Finally, Mark broke the tension.
"Okay, fine.
Maybe we said some things we shouldn't have. But it's family business, Mom. Family doesn't air its dirty laundry. You're making this worse than it needs to be." I stepped closer, my voice firm. Family protects each other. Family loves without conditions. Family doesn't try to strip a mother of the only thing she has left. What you did today wasn't family, it was greed. For the first time, I saw something flicker in Mark's expression. Not regret, not yet, but the awareness that maybe they'd gone too far. Helen returned then, knocking softly on the door before letting herself in. She carried a manila folder, thick with papers. "I thought you might need these," she said gently, placing them on the table. "I printed transcripts of the recording, just in case. And I contacted my cousin, who works with a local lawyer. He's willing to help if you need it." Janet groaned. "Oh, for heaven's sake. What is this, a conspiracy? Are you two plotting against us now?" Helen gave her a cool look.
No, Janet.
"I'm standing up for my friend. Something you should have done long ago." The room crackled with tension. For a moment, I thought my children might storm out, or worse, lash out. But instead, they sat frozen, trapped by the weight of their own actions. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "This is your last chance. Leave me and this house alone. If you try anything again, anything, I'll take this recording to the lawyer, and I'll make sure the whole town knows what you tried to do. Do you understand me?" Mark swallowed hard. Lisa looked down at her lap. Janet's smirk had vanished entirely. Finally, Mark nodded.
"Fine, Mom.
"You win." But I didn't feel like I'd won. Not yet. Their words had cut too deep. Their betrayal had shaken me to the core. This wasn't about winning, it was about surviving, about holding on to the little dignity I had left. After they left, slamming the door behind them, Helen stayed with me. We sat in the quiet, sipping tea, letting the silence wash over us. My heart was still pounding, but slowly, it began to settle. "You did well," Helen said softly. "You stood up to them. That's not easy." I nodded, staring at the steam rising from my cup. "It doesn't feel like enough. They'll be back. People like that don't stop. Not until they've taken everything." Helen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then we'll be ready. Together." Her words settled into me like a warm blanket. For the first time in years, I didn't feel entirely alone. I had an ally, and I had something more, a resolve that had been buried deep inside, waiting for the right moment to rise. That night, as I prepared for bed, I walked through each room of my house slowly, touching the furniture, the photographs, the curtains my husband and I had hung together so many years ago. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was my life, my memories, my sanctuary, and I would defend it to my last breath. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I whispered into the darkness, almost as a vow. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Because I knew my children. They wouldn't give up so easily. And neither would I'd have you ever reach the point where your heart feels so full of truth that you can't keep quiet anymore. That was me, as I stood in the quiet of my house that evening, staring at the walls that had witnessed everything, my husband's laughter, my children's first steps, and now their betrayal. Before I finish my story, let me ask you, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? I love knowing these little things. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Her Revenge Stories. It helps me keep sharing these pieces of life, where justice sometimes takes its time but always finds its way. By the time the clock on my mantel struck 8, I had made up my mind. Enough was enough. My children thought they could chip away at me, wear me down, and someday walk away with everything I owned. But they had underestimated me. They had underestimated the power of truth. Helen returned that evening, carrying a casserole dish covered with foil. "Thought you might not feel like cooking," she said with a small smile. "Besides, I wanted to check in." I hugged her tightly. "You've done so much for me today. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she said simply. "We look out for each other." We sat at the kitchen table, eating quietly for a while, until headlights swept across the living room window. I froze. Helen set down her fork and looked at me with concern. "Is it them again?" I nodded. My stomach tightened as I heard the car doors slam. Then came the voices, Mark's deep, frustrated tone, Janet's sharp words, Lisa's nervous protests. They were back. The knocking was louder this time, more aggressive. I stood, my knees trembling but my heart steady. "It's time," I whispered to Helen. She squeezed my arm. "I'm right here." When I opened the door, Mark pushed his way inside without waiting for an invitation. "Mom, we need to talk." Janet followed close behind, her eyes blazing. "We're not leaving until this is settled." Lisa trailed behind them, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. "Sit," I said firmly, pointing to the couch. "If you want to talk, you'll do it my way." To my surprise, they obeyed. Maybe it was the tone of my voice, maybe it was the fact that Helen stood beside me like a sentinel. Either way, they sat. Mark leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Mom, listen. We've been thinking. We know the police can't do much without proof, and even if your neighbor did record us, it won't matter. You can't fight us forever. You're old. You can't keep this house up. You're going to need help someday, and we're the only ones who can give it to you. So, why not make it easier? Sign the house over, and we'll make sure you're comfortable." His words dripped with false kindness, but I saw the hunger in his eyes. Janet nodded beside him, chiming in with her usual smugness. "We'll even let you stay here for a while. It's not like we're throwing you out tomorrow. But this house is too much for you. You know it." I took a deep breath, letting their words hang in the air. Then I reached for the small recorder Helen had left on the counter earlier. I pressed a button, and their voices from earlier that afternoon filled the room, clear and sharp. Mom, you don't need this house anymore. Just sign the papers, it'll be easier. You can't take care of yourself forever. Their own words betrayed them, echoing back like ghosts. Mark's face turned crimson. You can't use that against us. Helen stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. It's already been backed up. Transcripts, copies, everything. You can't erase what you said. Janet jumped to her feet. This is ridiculous. You're letting her poison you against us, Mark. She's just some nosy neighbor. None of this matters. I raised a hand, silencing them. It matters to me. This house matters to me. And you've shown me today who you really are. I may be old, but I'm not blind. I see your greed. I see your impatience. And I won't let you take from me what I built with your father. Lisa suddenly burst into tears. I didn't want this, Mom. I swear, I told them it was wrong. I didn't want to hurt you. For a moment, my heart ached. She was my daughter. I remembered braiding her hair when she was little, sewing her Halloween costumes, watching her cry at her own wedding. But then I remembered her silence earlier, her folded arms, her refusal to speak up when Mark and Janet cornered me. You stood by and let it happen, I said quietly. You let them try to break me. Lisa sobbed harder, covering her face with her hands. Mark stood suddenly, his fists clenched.
Fine.
If that's how it's going to be, then you'll regret it. You can't fight us forever. I stepped closer, holding the recorder firmly in my hand. You're right, Mark. I can't fight you forever. Which is why I'm not going to fight. I'm going to expose you. Tomorrow morning, this recording goes to the lawyer Helen contacted. From there, it goes to the authorities. If I have to, I'll take it to the local news. Everyone will know what you tried to do to your own mother. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Janet's face drained of color. You wouldn't, she whispered. I met her gaze steadily. I would, and I will. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Finally, Mark turned and stormed toward the door, muttering curses under his breath. Janet followed, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Lisa lingered for a moment, her eyes red and swollen, before she too slipped out the door. When the car engine roared to life and faded into the night, I felt my knees weaken. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. Helen placed a steady hand on my shoulder. You did it. You stood your ground. I nodded slowly. I don't know if they'll give up. People like that, they don't always stop. Then we'll make sure they don't come back, Helen said. With the lawyer, with the recording, with the truth. You're not alone anymore. Her words sank into me, softening the edges of my fear. For so long, I'd felt like an island, adrift, unwanted, vulnerable. But now I realized something important. I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The clock ticked steadily in the quiet house. The day that had begun with betrayal had ended with a kind of peace. A fragile peace, yes, but peace nonetheless. I rose slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. The stars were faint, scattered like tiny promises in the darkness. My reflection stared back at me, older and wearier than I remembered, but stronger too. This house is mine, I whispered to the glass. And so is my life. They won't take it from me. Helen stood beside me, her presence a steady comfort. Together, we watched the night stretch out before us, vast and silent. And deep inside, I knew the truth. My revenge wasn't loud or violent. It wasn't a scene from a movie or a storybook ending. My revenge was standing tall, refusing to bend, and showing my children that the woman they thought was weak had found her strength again. My revenge was final.